Have you ever joined a survival server and had this happen to you? Someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, come and have a look at my house. It's really great." And you're like, "Sure, why not? I've got nothing better to do." And then you go all the way to his house, which is, by the way, a good 1,000 blocks away from spawn, just to find this. And he's like super proud of him. So I'm here to give you 5 easy steps to turn this hunk of wood into a proper house. The first step is to create a frame. Now, this sounds very easy, and you will be tempted to make your frame within the wall itself. This is an instant mistake. You want to make your frame a block diagonal to the corner of your house. And then you want to bring it up and literally do what I'm doing, which is follow all the way around the outside of your house. If your house is as tall as mine is, you might want to cut it in half. That is to say, we're going to make it a 2-story building, and the frame has to compensate for that. So I find the halfway point between my column frames, and then make a beam between them. You may find that your, quote, house is now just surrounded in another box. That's completely normal because we're now going on to the second step, which is to change the shape. But I have deceived you. The first step and the second step merge into one, but I didn't want to confuse you before we started. So let's move on to the second step, which is change the shape. Now, one thing that you can do to completely make your builds better every time is give it a creative shape. If it's just a box, it's never going to look good. Never. Even if you had the most detailed box on the planet, it will still look bad. You need a bit of creativity in your shape. So what I'm going to do is knock out a corner and make a little balcony. And I'm also going to make the house extend forward and have a reception room and door. I'm only going to do these 2 things as an example. Remember that this house is just to show you the 5 steps on improving a house, not to make the best house possible, otherwise I would be here a long time. So extend your frame forwards however many blocks you want it to be. It's easier to visualize the shape of the house, and obviously I can't do that for you, you have to do that. And then go from there, fill in the walls after you've done the frame. That's what I mean by step 1 and step 2 come hand in hand, because you need to create the frame as you do the shape. So we finish up putting the wall on the inside of the frame. We then have a fairly good looking shape for a house. It's not the best, but it will do for the purposes of this video. I'm then just going to take some fence and put it around the balcony, just so I get that out of the way. And now we're moving on to the third step, which is arguably the most important one, the roof. No building ever has looked good with no roof. It is very, very important. The technique I'm going to be using is one that works for very thin buildings. That is not to say that this will work for every single one. When I say the third step is the roof, I do not mean just copy what I'm doing. You need to come up with a roof that suits your house. I'm just using one that I think will suit this house. Okay, so I'm going to be using the same one I did for my rustic house tutorial. I start with the overhang, and I do that in cobblestone, and it goes up in a cone shape. I like to put the overhang on all the edges of my building before I do the actual roof itself. I then go on to fill the space between the overhangs with some spruce wood, and I like to decorate it and give it a bit of shape with half slabs and just making it look very juttery. However, during the recording I started running out of memory about here, so it's all jumping around. I'm just going to skip to the end. If you haven't seen this part before, like making a roof, check out my rustic house tutorial, that shows it a bit better. So that moves us on to step 4. Detailing. You can see that the house now has some shape, but it just lacks character. I'm just going to do a couple of very simple things to make the house look a bit more interesting. I'm going to be adding windows, and I'm going to be adding a bit of wall decoration. So I'm just going to hit some random holes into the middle of each segment of wall and just put in a window. And then to the side, I'm going to be adding a couple of fence blocks just to give it a little bit of depth and a bit of texture. Nothing special here. You literally repeat this process for every single segment, and eventually the whole house will be detailed. It's completely up to you what you choose to detail it with. I just chose fence and glass because I felt like it. You can choose stairs and half slab. It's completely up to you. Now, for the most part, except for the interior, which, as always, I will leave up to you, the house is pretty much finished. However, there is a final step that you can do to improve your house, and that is transitioning. The transition from house to the surrounding environment really makes a difference in your build. It makes it look good if you have a transition. If your house just juts out in the middle of nowhere, let's say for example you just have a flat land with a house on it, it doesn't look as good as something that's integrated into the land. So what I'm going to be doing is adding a garden in the front and a farm on the side. It really looks like the house is spread out along the floor, not just sticking up out of the ground. After I've planted all my carrots in the ground, I'm then just going to turn my attention to the doorway, give it a little detail over the top, and call it finished. And there we go. We have turned, if you remember what it looked like before, a block of wood into a relatively good looking house. And now I'm not saying that this house is perfect, it's far from it, but what I was trying to show you is that in a very short amount of time you can make it look good just by following some very easy instructions. That's all from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this type of video, please do leave me some feedback, and if you have any more suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Bye!